Welcome to 56-Bit Cloud Cafe, your go-to destination for all tech topics in the cloud. I'm Athir Zalat.
And I'm Patrick Camilleri. And together we'll be addressing various cloud topics.
Hello everyone and welcome back. In this series, we are diving into DynamoDB, a fully managed NoSQL database service provided by AWS. In today's episode, we will cover the basics of DynamoDB, what it is, and why it might be the right choice for your applications. So let's start. We often hear about DynamoDB, so let's start with the basics. What is DynamoDB and how does it differ from traditional SQL databases?
So DynamoDB is an AWS service, one of many. It is a cloud-based, completely serverless database, and it is a NoSQL database. So it's important to understand the difference between traditional SQL, standard query language, SQL databases, versus NoSQL databases, which are kind of their opposite. So with SQL databases, the traditional versions of databases, we're looking at a data structure which is pretty rigid, where you have tables, you have rows and columns, and these tables can join each other and can get data from multiple tables in a way which is a bit holistic. So that capability is very, very strong. That's why they are used a lot. But ultimately, they tend to be quite rigid in the sense that you cannot change the data inside. Has to be of a specific type and a specific format, and it's not that easy to change the structure of the data. Apart from that, SQL databases also tend to have some issues with scaling to a very large scale, right? So they can scale quite a lot, but when you get to a point of scale which goes beyond their capabilities, that's where they tend to suffer. NoSQL databases, on the other hand, are a lot more flexible in their approach to how they save data. It's a data modeling technique, basically, which scales seamlessly. You can think of it as a supersized key value store, where you have a key, and that key represents a specific value. What is inside that value, you might not even know, or the database might not even care what's inside that value. As long as you know the key, you can get the value. And it allows querying, it allows even complex querying, not maybe as complex as SQL queries, but it's used a lot for that flexibility and scaling, which is basically infinite. It can grow and grow and grow, both when you're writing as well as when you're reading data. So they both have their uses and their use cases. They can be used in conjunction with each other, depending what you need, whether you need scalability and flexibility versus whether you need more rigid schemas but more complex querying.
That's a great overview on what DynamoDB is. Now, can you explain the key benefits of using DynamoDB?
Yes, definitely. The biggest benefit of DynamoDB is its speed and its scalability. It gives you blazing fast performance with a lot of features like automatic scaling to handle basically any workload you wish. And that's its strong point. Speed when writing, scalability when writing, speed and scalability when reading as well. So just to give you an idea here, we're talking about the ability to handle tens of millions of transactions per second, and this is what Amazon do when they have big offers on Amazon.com. Under the hood, those big offers like Black Friday, the website is using DynamoDB. So you can imagine the speed and scalability that affords. There is also an element of cost effectiveness here, where this is a serverless service, you only pay for what you use, for the amount of transactions you do, in the sense that what is the maximum amount of transactions you need per second. It is ideal for workloads where there is unpredictability or there is a burst in traffic because you are paying only a small base amount to be able to read and write, and then if you need to burst, you need to go up in scale, you can do so, and you only pay for the time that you have burst. It also provides a lot of flexibility. This is done through the NoSQL data structure. Most NoSQL databases would give you this flexibility. DynamoDB is no different. There is no predefined schema when you're going in. All you need is a key, a little value basically, which defines a unique value, which defines what where the value lies in the database. The value itself can be anything you want. It can be a document, a JSON document, it can be a piece of text, it can be a lot of things. It can even be an image if you want, but there are best practices around that on how to do that rather than doing it through DynamoDB. In that case, it would make sense to use Amazon S3, which in itself is like a NoSQL database as well. Finally, it is serverless. DynamoDB is, you don't need any know-how in handling the underlying infrastructure, and that frees up your focus and your required abilities to just the development part. So if you understand how to develop with DynamoDB, that's it. You can just use it. There is nothing else that you need to know in terms of management. So security updates, upgrades, scalability, and all these things, they are handled for you as part of the service.
Okay, that helps explain the benefits. But I'm curious to know more about the typical scenarios where DynamoDB really shines. What are the primary use cases for DynamoDB?
Right, yeah, so DynamoDB lends itself to a number of use cases. You can use it for whatever you wish. As I said, it's important to always identify what type of features you want from your database and whether you need, first of all, an SQL database, which DynamoDB isn't, versus a NoSQL database. If you decide that NoSQL is the way to go, then DynamoDB is always a good choice. It allows you to build things like backends, mobile backends, for example, for mobile applications. It's ideal for storing data, session information, real-time updates for that information. It's very speedy, very scalable, and you can definitely do that. It might be good for Internet of Things, IoT applications, because it effectively manages data streams from various devices. Using other AWS services, you might want to use it as a storage layer for that application. You might want to handle massive data sets with ease, so it's good for big data applications because of its scalable architecture. When we say scalable, we don't mean just maintaining a steady speed in terms of reads and writes, no matter, we also mean that you can scale in terms of amount of data and you maintain that speed no matter the amount of data. That's what we mean by scalable. And it's also highly available. It will allow you to store this data in multiple physical locations without even thinking about it as part of the service. Finally, it's really good for e-commerce applications. Things like product catalogs, shopping carts, holding the session information of your users, personalized recommendations. So ultimately, if NoSQL is the way to go for you, then DynamoDB is a good choice. There are other options, of course, some of them even managed services inside AWS, like DocumentDB, which manages MongoDB databases, and there are others which are NoSQL as well, but DynamoDB is definitely one of them.
Okay, now availability and durability are so important, especially for mission-critical applications. How does DynamoDB ensure high availability and durability of data?
So, by default, DynamoDB replicates data across multiple geographically separated locations, known as availability zones. So, by doing that, it replicates the data across multiple servers in different geographical locations. It ensures data accessibility even if there are outages of those locations or servers. It also offers write-ahead logging, basically, which allows data consistency and it allows recovery to a specific transaction. So very granular recovery of your data if you need to. Backups are part of the process as well. You can do that. There is a lot of features in there which allow this high availability and durability.
Amazing. Now, with any technology, there can be some misunderstandings. I'm interested to learn what common misconceptions exist around DynamoDB.
This is an interesting question because there are a lot of misconceptions about DynamoDB, and I would say the biggest two are complexity and price. So when it comes to complexity, some people say you cannot have the same level of complex querying like you can with an SQL database, like MySQL or like Postgres. And the answer is no, you cannot. It's very simple because it wasn't designed for that. So this is where you should use infrastructure and architectures which are designed for what they were designed for. So DynamoDB is not designed to have super complex querying like SQL, just like other NoSQL databases were not designed for super complex querying. Having said that, I feel that a lot of people don't realize just how much complexity DynamoDB affords, how much ability to retrieve information efficiently across different types of patterns that you might want to use. There is a lot in there if we go into detail, and we will hopefully on the next episodes see that there is already significant things that you can do to access your data efficiently. The other misconception about DynamoDB is price. And I could not disagree more, because DynamoDB has a number of features like on-demand pricing and auto-scaling, which allows it to be very cost-effective. It can be even more cost-effective than an SQL database if you have the option of choosing NoSQL. And it depends a lot how you configure it, how you develop on it. It might also depend on the scale that you have, but ultimately there are lots of features which can keep the costs down.
And by now, we've reached the end of our episode. We hope you now have a better understanding of what DynamoDB is and why it is a powerful tool for managing data. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we will dive into the data modeling and table design in DynamoDB. Until then, happy cloud computing!
If you have questions, suggestions, or want to share your feedback, connect with us on social media.
Also, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and to leave us a review to help others find their way to the Cloud Cafe.